Okay, wow, that took that bump pretty smooth, actually. Okay. All right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Out of the gates here, I want to say that this is not a sponsored review in any way. I purchased these suspension seat posts myself because I actually want/need one. So this is not a review video for the sake of reviews, nor will it be a spec-centric debate. I'm actually picking the seat post I want and need, as my lower back has been pretty sore at the end of my daily rides. And whether it's my age catching up to me or perhaps I'm turning a bit bougie and soft, I don't know. But I do know that I'm growing quite tired of needing to ease into every chair I sit in these days. And so for the tests, I pretty much incorporated them into my weekly routine, which consists of a daily commute to and from the office and some weekend trail riding for fun. I used 2 different seats and put in a couple hundred miles on city streets, bike trails, washed out dirt roads, and a bit of single track before I was ready to call it. I was looking for 3 things, really. First and foremost, I wanted that stiffness in my back gone. The winning post had to take care of that. Second, it had to feel good to ride. And third, it needed to be convenient to use. With that said, the stage is set. Let's compare these 3 posts. Let's go ahead and start with number 3, how convenient these are to use. This one, the Redshift, was my least favorite to set up. It was not convenient at all to set the seat in place. So this little feature here was really janky. It really felt like it was an afterthought, really. Maybe they spent all of their time, effort, and energy and design feature in trying to make this post lightweight, because it is quite a bit lighter than the other options on the table. But trying to get your seat in here, because this was so wobbly and wonky, this thing was in the way the whole time. On top of that, there was no way to easily adjust the actual tilt of my seat. Once I got the seat on, which took a minute, trying to adjust the tilt was almost impossible for me, especially if I was wanting to set it up, which I did multiple times in the course of this video of reviewing the posts. I set it up multiple times because I was swapping these posts in and out. And this just, I was never able to repeat where my tilt was, and it was never really all that easy to set the tilt as well. I found that with the screws being back here to tighten it, they were hard to get to. My bike tools, I had 2 of them. They didn't really fit, so you had to, well, they fit, but they were hard to twist because of the positioning of this. You could really only twist it a little bit. You'd have to pop it off and put it back in, twist it a little bit, pop it off. It took forever to tighten. And as you tightened down those screws, what would happen is, see how this is just kind of a hassle and in the way? As I would tighten it down, what would happen is the tilt of the seat would start to move, because this mechanism, as I said, it feels like an afterthought. This mechanism was not handy to use. Now, setting up the tension from the bottom, having to take the post out was not a big deal. That wasn't a factor for me, even though the Kinekt is a little easier in that regard. This really didn't ding the post too much, as the Suntour sets the same way. And really, I have a quick release for my stem, so it's really fast to pull out and adjust. It's not a hassle to do there. The fact that it had this marking system was a win, so that I could definitely set my actual tension to where I wanted it to be over and over again. It was just that this thing was way too problematic for a post that was in this price range. It needed to upgrade this so much in order for me to rank it high. So with that being absolutely frustrating to use, I found myself, when it was time for me to test this post each time, I was dreading it, because I didn't want to have to go through the rigmarole of getting my seat in here, taking forever to tighten it, and trying to get it into position. So this one for me, ease of use, didn't check the box for me. Now, the Suntour, on the other hand, really was a superior setup. Sometimes changing what has worked for ages is not always a good thing. Moving forward sometimes can be moving backwards, as this thing was. This was so simple to use, and in fact, it was the easiest one out of the 3 of these to get my bike tool on. Once everything was set up to adjust the tilt of the seat, was very easy. this thing, even though this is a common feature on a lot of cheaper bike posts, this was actually, these are very sturdy, very, very well made. They have a nice spring to them. If you can see that there's a spring built into it so that it pushes out, which makes it easy to set up, unlike this, no spring in there. So this was really easy to set up. You could adjust your seat tilt and everything very, very, very quickly and efficiently. The only thing that it didn't have for it, if they would add some type of marking system so that you could repeat that position very quickly and easily, this would have been top notch at that point. But really, this was, in my opinion, the easiest post to set up in position, because this mechanism with that added spring in there really was a nice touch. Also, the tensioning for your adjustment for tension down here was just as easy to get to as this. I found both systems were just as easy to use, except this one didn't really have a clear way to get back to the setting that you had for your tensioning. So not as convenient for tensioning here, but because this thing was so easy to set up and move seat posts in and out, and because the tensioning setting down here was easy to use, even though it didn't have the marking for easy repeating of your actual tension settings, I found I was able to work around that. And considering the price difference between the two, I gave this one a check. It checked the box for me. It was very convenient, very easy to use. Now, the Kinekt was, out of the three of these, definitely the easiest to use. It by far blew these ones out of the water because of the mechanism that it has here. This did not feel like an afterthought. This felt like this guy, but this guy on steroids, if you will. They added a spring so that the tension will stay up as you're trying to place your seat in. And being able to access the screws right here was very easy with a bike tool. I can do a full revolution and tighten it up without any problems, even when it was on the bike and the seat was already in place. I could get to it very quickly and easily. Adjusting the tilt was very smooth and very easy. It stayed exactly where you wanted, and they added the marking so that I could repeat where I wanted my seat to be. Very, very convenient. And then the added benefit of this one is you adjust the tension from back here. You don't have to remove this from your bike in order to adjust the settings. And it also has a dial here that shows you where your tension setting is. So I could very easily know that I liked it on 4 for the dirt, for example, and I liked it on closer to the 2 level for the road. So it was very easy, very convenient to use, by far the easiest, best, most thought out when it came to being able to use it and the function of setting up. Okay, and so for the second one is, how was it to use? How did I enjoy it? How was the feel while I was riding? And once again, I have to say that the Redshift ranked at the bottom here for the overall feel. I come in at 195 pounds. Based on what came with this post, the little pamphlet that came with the post, it technically said I could ride with the added spring or without the added spring. So I initially tested it without the added spring and found that I didn't have enough travel once I set in it, even once I put it on the most stiff setting that I could. I didn't have enough travel left. I would sink in, and when I hit a bump, I bottomed out. So I didn't have enough travel to absorb all of the bumps that I was hitting. And so I had to add the spring, and once I added the spring, I found that it became much too stiff and that I didn't really sink into what I was riding over as much as the other two. I felt the bumps more often in this one, and I also didn't enjoy this off-road at all. I just didn't want to ride this one. And I found almost every time, like I said, I didn't want to set it up, and I found that as I was riding it, in both scenarios, dirt and road, I was kind of wishing I had one of the other two on. This one just didn't quite work for me, and it could be at my weight range, it just didn't work out. But I do have to say, I'm going to give it a yes and no, because even though it didn't work for me on off-road scenarios, it did provide a pretty comfortable ride when I was on the road. Now, again, it was inferior to both of these, but it did help a bit. in alleviating the stress that I was feeling. For the Suntour, this thing is definitely a check. I was really, really impressed. I had plenty of travel in this when I adjusted it. It would allow me to sit in on my rides, and the bumps didn't throw me off. I was able to sink into the bumps, and once it was dialed in for whether I was off-road or on-road, this thing really was smooth as a ride, and it felt really good. I felt like I had control. Like this one felt very stiff, like you were kind of on just a standard seat post. So this one had good control, but this one had that added benefit of having the control plus just a far more comfortable ride and alleviating the feeling of the bumps. I was less fatigued on this one than I was on this one. And this one by far was the better feel for me out of these three, although it was very, very close to the Suntour when it came to feeling of being in control and being able to sink into those bumps. But I gave the Kinekt the win here because the Kinekt really kind of felt like it had the most room for me to sit in. And I felt like the adjustment here did more for me than the Suntour. So I was able to dial this one in that much more as I adjusted the settings. It just did more than what the Suntour did. The Suntour, as I adjusted it, I felt less of a difference in the adjustments and settings on tension than I did on the Kinekt. The Kinekt really, I was able to dial in and get where I wanted to be on it. And honestly, at the end of the day, it felt like an air ride. That's kind of what this felt like. It really felt like you were floating, but you still had that connectedness to the bike that you want to be able to be in control. You weren't bouncing all over the place. You really set into that bike. And finally, and ultimately, did they actually alleviate the pain in my lower back? And for the Redshift, that again was a yes and a no. On my days when I rode just on the road, I found that my back felt pretty good. It wasn't sore and stiff, but when I was off-roading with it, I definitely had that stiffness come back. With the Suntour, no stiffness, no pain. This thing really, really impressed me. This thing was incredible just for the fact that it came in at $90 compared to $230 and $270. But the Kinekt, guys, really is the winner for me here. I had no pain. I felt the most comfortable during the rides. I never got tired on any of the rides, never got a stiff back on any of the rides with the Kinekt. Everything felt just smooth and really, really impressed with this guy. Now, let me sum that up by saying the Kinekt is clearly my recommendation. If you have the $270 to spend, get this guy every time. Pick this one over the Redshift. In my opinion, these don't even compare. The Redshift versus the Suntour, the Suntour is going to win, and you're going to save yourself a lot of money because this is not only cheaper, but a better ride. It did more for me in more terrains and was easier to use than the Redshift. If you are asking yourself, do you go with the Suntour or the Kinekt? I'm going to say if you have the money to spend, Kinekt every time, because this was so comfortable, and I absolutely love riding on this post. If you don't have that extra money to spend, you will not be sad with the Suntour. The Suntour is going to be a comfortable ride. It's going to be a convenient setup. It's going to check all the boxes, in my opinion, except for weight. If you're worried about weight, this is not the post for you. But on an e-bike, I'm not overly concerned with any of that. So hopefully, guys, this helped you make a decision, helped you compare. And if it didn't help you, I hope at least you learned something or enjoyed the process along with me. Until the next video, guys, take care.